Hello everybody, it's Jeff from Happy Texas Homestead. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be right in my wheelhouse. This is where I make my bread and butter. This is my passion. This is my gift from God. And that is leather work. So what I'm going to do is a series of shorter videos, and what we're going to be doing is making a knife sheath for my personal knife. I recently just bought a survival knife, and I need to make a sheath for it. It's been laying on the kitchen bar for about 2.5 months now, and I haven't been able to do anything with it because I had rotator cuff surgery, so I haven't been able to get in the shop and do anything. So this first part one, I guess we could call it, is going to be making the pattern and possibly cutting out the leather. We'll see how much time it is. And we'll kind of go from there. Kind of going to walk you through the whole process, or my whole process of, of creating a project from start to finish, from the pattern all the way through to the finished product. And that's it. I just want everybody to know that this is not necessarily the expert way to do it. I'm not an expert. I've been doing leather work for 20 years. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot of bad habits. I've learned a lot of good habits. But this is what works for me, and hopefully maybe you can get something out of it and make it work for you. If nothing else, just take a little bit of it and go on. So that's what we're going to do today. So this is the knife that we are going to be making a sheath for. The first thing that you want to do is put some blue tape or some kind of tape on the blade. And the reason for that is, A, you don't want to get cut because you're going to be handling the knife quite a bit. And B, to protect the blade from moisture. Moisture will cause the blade to rust, obviously. And when we get to several steps down the road here, the leather will be wet and the knife will be inside of the sheath, wet forming, and you don't want to cause any rust on the blade. Always got to take a little time to spend some time with some beautiful golden retrievers, Boomer and Daisy. All right, break time's over. Back inside the shop. So as you can see, the knife is overall length of about 9 inches. And we're going to put about 6.5 to 7 inches into the actual sheath. Okay, in order to make the pattern for the knife sheath, I like to use manila file folders. They're cheap, they're easy to work with, and they're easy to see. You can lay it down on the leather pretty good, trace out your pattern, and they're easy to save if you need to save them. So the first thing that I do when I make a pattern for anything is I take the object. And generally, I start, if it's a folding type of product, like a gun holster or a knife sheath or something like that, where I'm going to have a middle and then it's going to fold over itself onto the other side. I will take the file folder and use where it closes, the center of the file folder, and use that as my center point. I didn't do that on this one, but that's generally what I do. So what I will do is I will take the knife, I'll lay it on its spine, right in the center of that crease. I will turn it, lay it over, and trace the outline of the knife onto the manila folder. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, by no means. Then I will do the same thing. I'll lay it back over on this side, trace it out, the profile of the knife, and then set the knife aside. And that gives me a general idea of where the knife is going to be in the sheath. Now, there's a variance there. There's not a science to this. And then what I will do is start sketching the profile of whatever pattern that I want. I'll start sketching out that pattern. So as you can see here, I started right here because this is the center of my knife, and I started sketching out kind of the curves and the profile of the knife I want to get, all the way down to the blade, to the tip of the blade, and then sketch the same thing on this side. It's just a sketch. It's not a final line. It's not a stitch line. It's not a cut line. It's just a sketched line. So that gives me a basic idea of the shape of the pattern that I'm going to use. So from that line, what I will do is I will start fine-tuning my curves. You want curves in any type of holster or sheath. You want curves because they don't poke in areas of your body. In other words, you don't want a piece of leather that's potentially 3/16 to 1/4 of an inch thick poking into your leg if you're wearing this thing all day long. It's going to get uncomfortable. So curves allow for that not to happen. They allow for the corners not to be there and it not to poke on your leg or wherever it may be that it pokes. Well, curves are always good in any type of leather product where you're wearing it up against your body. So, as I stated, I will start to finalize my curves of the sheath, the outline of the sheath. I'll figure out exactly where I want to hang the sheath from my belt and sketch that in. And then it's a matter of finalizing, putting the knife in here on your pattern, folding it over, seeing if you like the layout until you get comfortable and you find where you like it. Once you do that, you can go ahead and darken your line and cut it out. Now what I do is I always make my patterns way bigger than they need to be. And that's because it's easier to cut away leather than it is to put leather back. So if I cut this, say I use this line right here, I cut out the leather, I fold the knife over, and I realize, I don't have enough room for a stitch line and for the knife to go into the sheath. Well, I've wasted a piece of leather at this point. So I always make my patterns much bigger than they actually need to be, because trimming leather is way easier. Okay, the next step is to lay the pattern out on the leather and trace it out, and cut the leather. But before we do that, I just want to tell y'all that I like to use a bit of a thicker leather for my knife sheaths and for my holsters. I feel that I would rather have a little bit of extra weight when carrying an object than for it to be flimsy. I don't want anything to be flimsy. I don't want anything to fall out. So I use a heavier leather, which is about a 9 to 10 ounce leather. And that gives me a pretty good firm body for holsters and knife sheaths. Now this piece of leather is 9 to 10 ounce. It's a piece of scrap, which is sufficient for me, for something I'm doing for me personally. I would not use this for a customer's order. It's not the best piece of leather, but for me, it'll work. I need to use my scraps up, so this will work for me. So the first thing that you'll do, you get your piece of leather out, take your pattern, and find where it'll fit, where the pattern will fit well onto your leather. So I don't want to use that part of it. That's very, very stretchy, which does not make for a good product. I want to try to keep it down in this area here somewhere. So, and away from these marks. So I think about right there looks good. I will take a pencil, because a pencil can be erased. A pen, if I mess up, cannot be erased. Therefore, I've got a piece of junk leather at that point. This can be erased. I will trace out my pattern, being careful to stay against the edge of the pattern while going around the leather, because we don't want to waste too much leather. I mean, it's expensive. So we want to use as much of it as we can possibly use in an economical fashion. Okay. Once I have the pattern traced out onto the leather, I will move the project from my stamping bench to my cutting area. Now this is going to fold over and attach to the sheath over here. The length of that is really irrelevant at this point. As long as it's long enough to go around, fit the belt, and you have enough to rivet it to the sheath itself. Okay, the piece of leather is ready to cut, but that will be part 2. This video is getting a little long, and I don't want to make it too long. So we'll make that part 2 and in a couple of days. Thanks for watching. Please hit the like button if you found this content useful. And please subscribe and hit the bell for the notifications when we upload new videos. Thank you. Have a good day.